Hello and welcome to another Catalyst channel video. So anybody who knows me will know that I am a huge advocate and a huge fan of anything that's sort of quirky or techie, and I love just to kind of get my hands on kit and expensive equipment that I and a lot of people wouldn't necessarily have access to. So I'm quite fortunate in the sense of my job tends to allow me to have access to some equipment, and I get to talk to businesses and chance to go to events where I get to see some kit that, you know, as a kid I would have just gone wow and just amazing. So basically today is just a sort of little video that's kind of talking about some kit I got to play with and I was very fortunate to play with, which is again then piques my interest because something I've been kind of playing about with over the last few years has been 3D scanning as a kind of way to streamline the 3D pipeline. So you'll notice that I kind of have a thing for kind of emerging technologies such as AR and VR and this idea of how users engage with technology in new and innovative ways. And any way that can kind of increase or improve that pipeline is just something that I have to just play with. So throughout this video you'll see some clips of kind of me going around scanning this car. This was not a project that I was actively involved in. This was just something I got asked to come along, learn, try and play about with this 3D scanner, and it's just something that I kind of just jumped at the opportunity to do, obviously. So the scanner we was using today is the Artec Leo, and I'm just kind of going to be looking down at it sometimes just because I've got the specs up on the screen because there's quite a lot of specs for this. And the fantastic thing about this 3D scanner compared to the traditional 3D scanners I've used in the past is it's totally handheld. So whereas a traditional 3D scanner which uses kind of infrared beams and alongside a normal camera to track how long it takes for that beam to bounce off a surface and bounce back, basically that's how you get the depth data, compared to a kind of the traditional ones, the ones I've used in the past, where you normally have to have a person walking around with a laptop and somebody else with a scanner. This is a completely all-in-one solution. That does, however, have a huge drawback of being quite a costly piece of kit. It's around 22,000 euros. It's about 18,000-ish pounds, depending on where you kind of source it from, I suppose, with a 0.1 millimeter point accuracy. So why I'm interested in 3D scanning as a kind of content producer or technologist, I suppose, is for myself, I used to do a lot of 3D modeling, but I also find it kind of silly that how I'd have to 3D model things like chairs, tables, objects that most people have access to. It just seemed to be a kind of waste of time almost to model something that you could quite easily have in the room and just have access to already. And 3D scanners have kind of got more and more accessible. You know, we've got to the point where you can use your iPhone 11 or you can even use an iPad Pro with an inbuilt LiDAR sensor to do a basic 3D scan. The difference between 3D scanning and phototelemetry is phototelemetry, you're taking a series of photos and then having the computer kind of stitch it together. It doesn't have that kind of beam bouncing back, so the accuracy is always a little bit off, whereas an actual proper 3D scanner that uses kind of LiDAR technology is always going to kind of give you a more accurate result. However, there's always a drawback with every technology, and I'm kind of going to go through the kind of my experience with it that I had today. So first thing I was sort of amazed by was the size. It was quite compact, as you'll see in the clip. I'm walking around with this kind of scanner that looks a little bit like two eyeballs on a stick, and it's flashing a white light. That white light is basically the laser, the beam that's being emitted, and the time it takes for that beam to bounce back off the surface back into its sensor is the sort of tells it how far away the object is, the depth of it, and a kind of measurement. And it's then building up a series of images, and those series of images basically stitched together, and it's using a kind of a bit inbuilt AI to stitch together these common lines to try and join together this 3D mesh. Now it doesn't work very well with it doesn't work with reflective surfaces, so things like Windows or Chrome. It didn't actually pick up very well, so that was a kind of thing. We was already aware of this, but it was just a thing to bear in mind. So when we did the 3D scan of this car, we was only focused on its bodywork. Now I'd love to be able to show you a model of this car, but it's not. I'm not liable to do so. So I can only show you footage of me going around with the scanner and some pictures of the scanner itself, sadly. The software it comes and bundled with, again, I can't show you, but needless to say, when you're spending this kind of money on a scanner, you'd expect to have, professional software included, and that does seem to be the case with this product. The thing about these 3D scanners is you have to get quite a bit of distance on them, so you can kind of call a clipping plane. And if you've seen my scanning with a Connect video, you'll sort of see some of the principles about the further away you go, it starts to go red and then black, meaning it's no longer being detected. Same if you get too close. You want to try and keep everything that's within the scan green, which means you're at the appropriate distance away from the subject. Anything that's kind of too uniform or doesn't have any kind of points of interest to track, it does have a little bit of a wobbly. So when you're 3D scanning, we tend to find scanning something that's kind of got bit of uniqueness about it as a starting point is always good, and if you lose your scan halfway through, it can pick it back up, but you should return to a previous scan point where there was quite a lot of detail for it to have realigned essentially. Now because we were scanning a car, this was quite problematic. We did have to move this car around quite a few times, and luckily it was on like wheels, so we could move it around on this sort of trolley system. The actual picture quality or texture quality from the camera is not amazing. It's basically a sort of 2.3 megapixel texture resolution on the device. So you wouldn't be using this for capturing material data. You'd only be really using this for the mesh data. It captures these files as cloud point data. So cloud points differ from 3D models in a few senses. Cloud points, it basically takes these little dots, and these dots are in a relationship to each other. Unlike a polygon where you've kind of got these meshes building up, cloud data is designed to take more accurate measurements, but also be less memory intensive. It's one of the reasons why this handheld can scan so quickly. We could move around fairly fast. Is because it's running on a sort of an NVIDIA processor or graphics card, within the unit. It was quite heavy to hold, so when we started having to hold the device above the car at certain points, our arms would start to give out, which was kind of fun to say the least. It has an inbuilt storage device, but we was using a micro SD just to get the data on. That was again quite useful. It also has a Wi-Fi connection, so an Ethernet port, so you can actually plug it into a computer and have it fed through that way. The internal hard drive is 256 gigabytes of an SSD storage. You do need to run this on a Windows machine, and your computer, once you start to process it on your machine, does need to be on a certainly good spec. It's very RAM intensive, as you can imagine, with the processing power required. So I was speaking with co-worker who was the kind of person who was doing most of the scanning and the person who was running this show, as it were, this operation that I was doing a scan with, and basically he was just sort of like, he was trying to guide me through it, and I was trying to learn alongside the process. It has a rechargeable battery inbuilt. I can't tell how long the battery lasts because we didn't really explore that too much, but it did seem to last. Was there for about 2 hours, so it seemed to have lasted 2 hours without any sign of running low. But yeah, this is the Artec Leo, and it's the most impressive 3D scanner I've got to play with. I do believe there are sort of more industrial size scanners, so this is definitely more for kind of scanning people, scanning objects. It's not the same, that you wouldn't necessarily use this for scanning like a building or anything. And again, if you want to scan a building, that would look at a different technology, which hopefully again I will get to play with, and I'll hopefully be able to get a bit more footage of that one than I was able with this project. And basically with that, we're using a LiDAR scanner, and we're using a piece of software or program called Matterport for that. And again, I have touched on Matterport before, but this will be actually looking at Matterport using the proper kit, so to speak. So yeah, where I see 3D scanners being used is obviously for 3D printing, but also for product visualization, architectural kind of points of interest. Obviously things like game development or film production, where you can scan a person and you can rig that person or adapt the model, is very useful. It cuts down the 3D modeling pipeline considerably, because if you've got this sort of point cloud data or this accurate data to begin with, you don't have to spend as long finessing things. You don't have to rebuild things from scratch. You can just take that model, adapt it, and we implement it for other uses. And the fantastic thing about 3D models is the fact that you can use them in so many different contexts. You can make them physically real, you can obviously keep them on a screen, and once you've got one 3D model, you can pretty much deploy it to most things, as long as you can get the format and the device has enough power to be able to render that 3D object sufficiently. So this has just been a kind of behind the scenes of some of the kit I get to play with. I'm hoping to be able to do more of this and actually maybe even get my hold on some of this kit and actually be able to do a proper, play about with it and do some tutorials on it. Again, that's going to be down to permissions. It's not the sort of kit that Joe Blogs or myself, for example, could just go out and get. It's well above the kind of price tag that I would ever invest in anything like this personally. But if you as a business or wanting to sort of produce a product, it can obviously save you considerable money in the long run. So I'll put links to the Artec scanner down below if you're interested, alongside some kind of reference images or videos I can find that might be of interest, so you can see the kind of results this product can produce. I'm not in any way sponsored or affiliated with Artec. There are other 3D scanner manufacturers out there. Artec do seem to be industry standard or industry recognised within this field, so they do seem to be kind of top tier. But again, I haven't been able to explore other alternatives or other opportunities. I'd love to be able to. We'll see how that goes in the future. So yeah, this has just been a kind of me playing with some tech, talking to you about my experience with that tech, and hopefully I can answer some questions if anybody's got any queries down in the comments down below. Remember to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you again very soon. Goodbye.